amount of hundreds of Zoom programs we've now done as librarians. But okay, Sue, Beth, Serena, thanks so much for being here. And Lisa, of course, thank you for showing up and sharing your expertise. I was just teasing Lisa, folks, if you didn't hear me, that she made it to like the ultimate lot weirdo list, which for me is like when I Google at night, being like, who has the coolest lots in the world? Library of Things. And Lisa definitely made it. I was like, what? I went through her entire catalog a whole bunch of times, being like, I have got to talk to this lady. How did she convince people to do this? And I have such a wants list based off of your inventory, not to mention, a few other things. So I am so excited for this conversation today. Thank you so very much for taking the time.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Um, so First off, so Serena Beth Sue, in case any of you hadn't been here before, just remember you can ask any questions. This is an informal conversation. You can show your face, not show your face. We get what it's like. We're all librarians too, right? So, this is supposed to be informal and fun. And if you can't be here right now or you can't hear, just type in your question and I will make sure it gets asked. I have a piece of paper here with questions from people who couldn't make it today, who are desperate for Lisa's. How did you make that work? We are recording. I would just like to know. So if you ask, anything particularly exciting or spicy, no, it will be on the recording. But also don't feel judged. I don't think I brushed my hair today. So, that's our vibe. Um, cool. All right. So, Lisa, I'm here in Maine in the US, but you're not next door. You are down south in Texas. Could you tell us a little bit about your library and kind of how big you are and just what your community is you serve?
Okay. I'm the director of the Brazoria County Library. It's a county system. Texas has a lot of different scenarios. We are one of them that the county library is the only library in the area. We don't have any city libraries. So we have 12 locations, 13 if you count the branch we have in our juvenile justice center.
Wow.
We serve a population closing in on 400,000, but we anticipate the growth to be very, very strong. And within the next 15 years, we're probably going to be closer to 750,000. We're just south of Houston on the Gulf Coast. So we have a very industrialized south, a very suburban north, and a very rural center. So that creates a lot of different kinds of needs as we decide what we're going to do to best serve our community.
Oh my gosh. So you're going to have a lesson learned for everyone here. I was going to say, because I have a wants list based off of yours and we're only 25,000 up here in like one of the most rural states. So, but I'm going to learn so much. This is great. Um, so cool. So can you tell us a little bit? So you're here today because you have an amazing library of things. I'm going to put the link into chat for any of you who haven't looked at it yet. Can you tell us how that happened, how that got started?
I imagine ours got started the way a lot of library things start. We had people who were donating books. Somebody was moving, they were donating books, and they said, I have this collection of like cake pans and cake decorating things that we're not going to move. Could we donate it here? And, at that point, we hadn't really circulated that kind of thing, but we're like, sure, that sounds like fun. And so they've donated, I think, 15 different cake pans and a bunch of different like icing tips and things like that.
Wow.
So that's how we started, with just a bunch of donated items that were very piecemeal, no overarching idea of what we wanted to collect or anything else. Just if somebody was willing to donate it and we felt like we could safely transport it from one branch to another, then we were fine with it. Um, Once we saw that there was some actual like buy into that, that's when we decided to start investing some of our own collection money. But we kept sort of the kind of hit and miss attitude. So it's like, this seems like fun. I'd like to do this. So we would buy that. We didn't really start trying to um, have method to our madness until we were several years in. So
Wow. So how many years, because years in is like a lot longer than some folks are just starting on this list. How many years in are you?
we are probably 8 years into this. So
Woohoo!
yeah, and we were really happy with how it's all gone. But like I said, after a while, we decided that we needed to start having some actual, collection theory behind how we were spending the money. So there are a few things that we will not do. We don't do anything gas powered, mostly
Yep.
because we can't store it. Like we don't have outbuildings.
Yep.
So that was the first thing that I was like, no, so chains, gas powered chainsaws are out. Somebody suggested like a riding lawnmower. I'm like, no, there's nowhere we can put a riding lawnmower. We can't safely transport it. So nothing gas powered. I mean, and that's almost our only hard and fast rule is nothing gas powered. So
Wow. That is
yeah,
super cool. Okay, so that's the hard and fast rule. And so now you said you were kind of the method to your madness. Are there other than no, we're not doing gas powered, are there other overarching principles of what you are doing? Or is it more of a we're not doing this, this, and this, and then anything else goes?
that's really the only thing that's like absolutely not. Anything else we'll talk about, but for us it becomes a question like why are we collecting these things?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've decided there's all sorts of reasons, but we think of it as a like sort of a taster's menu. Um,
Yeah.
so on one hand we're collecting things that like especially say on our craft side
Mm-hmm.
stuff that you saw a craft, you thought it would be interesting, but you're not willing yet to invest all your own money. So we do that initial investment for you, so you can try out something. So that's sort of one of the directions we go. And then we also have a really strong commitment to disaster recovery for obvious reasons. We have a lot of potential for disaster on the Gulf Coast, everything from industrial accidents to weather events to any number of things. So we have a strong concentration on disaster relief items, and then like one of our sort of misses, I guess, somebody donated a wine making
Mm-hmm.
kit. And that seems it's right up our alley. It's something you might want to test. It's not something you're going to want to invest in, yourself right away. But it was problematic because it's really difficult to clean and
Mm-hmm.
you can't actually make wine in 2 weeks.
Ah,
And so, we're like, we're not going to circulate something that you can't start and finish the entire project in what would be a normal checkout period. So that's one of the things that we talk about when something more esoteric comes up. Can you really start and finish this in a 2 week period of time? And if the answer is no, then it's probably not a good fit for us.
so fascinating. Okay, so if you see me scribbling here or like slightly moving, it's because I'm scribbling more questions to follow up with you on.
Okay.
So on that, so is everything a 2 week loan?
No, actually, no, it's not. And some things are only a week. Some things that we get a really high demand on, we can't keep up with our carpet cleaners, for instance. We cannot keep up with demand on the carpet cleaner and the power washers.
Yeah.
So those you get them for a week. And then in a disaster scenario, we have a trailer, and generally that checks out for 2 weeks. But in a disaster scenario, it sort of gets taken out of the regular rotation, and we will take it to someplace like a Home Depot or something, and then we let people check it out for an hour, basically so they can get all of their supplies home and bring it back. So, to maximize the number of people who have access to it. So generally it's a week or 2 weeks, but we have some, obviously emergency situations where all bets are off and we sort of do it by what we think we're going to need in that particular instance.
Gosh, I'm filling up my page with questions here. Okay, so this is so good. So disaster scenarios. So it sounds like you've been through some of those
Yes.
with in the Library of Things has been used in that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we came up with the plan several years ago, and very fortunately, we're not able to put it into practical use until this year. But
Eek.
we have a sort of a multifaceted approach to disasters. And so in the immediate aftermath of disaster, we will go into we are shelters ourselves, but we'll go into other shelters with our hotspots
Hmm.
and computer banks so that people in the immediate aftermath, they need to charge their phones and they need to start the insurance and the FEMA process. And so that's what we do. We don't do any circulating necessarily. Then after the first 2 or 3 days, then we go into recovery. And that's where
Hmm.
we try to set up sort of pop-up libraries, places where we know people are going to come, like Home Depot and places like that. And we check out our disaster recovery material, including the trailer, and we check those out at the store so that, like, if you're there and you're going to have to buy a bunch of sheetrock and paneling, but you also need a wet dry vac. For a lot of families, it's one or the other, and they need them both. So we'll check out the one so that they can invest in the other. And our I have to say our hardware stores have been very supportive of this.
Amazing.
We were worried that they would see it as cutting into their business, but they know it's sort of like loss leader kind of a thing,
Hmm.
where if we let them, they'll have more money to spend on the other stuff. So
Oh, that's so good to hear. What a great collaboration. I didn't think of that. Sorry, if you see me doing this, my daughter's got me doing this. So I have a young lane and it means same. Like, yeah, we had that same experience, so um wow. Okay. So that is super neat. And that's an angle we haven't heard as much about. But I do want to go back to kind of some of this, why you get what you get. So now a lot of what you have kind of makes a bit more sense to me. It seems like that. So obviously that trailer, I was wondering, so you let people use that regularly? Like they
mhm.
just come to, is it at one of your branches or if they like want it from another branch, does it get delivered to another branch? How does that work?
It's the only thing in our collection that you have to come to.
Okay.
It lives here at our administration building,
Got it.
and it's the only thing that we don't take to you. You have to come to it. We had a really great story with that because right after we got it, before it really started taking off, when people didn't, because a lot of the stuff that we circulate when we're out in the public talking about it, we invariably hear, "What do you mean you have a fill in the blank?"
Yeah.
And so this is definitely, you mean you have yes, we do. We have a trailer, but we had a local landscaping company, a gentleman who was doing landscaping, and his business had grown to the point where he needed another crew, but not quite enough that he could afford to invest in all of the stuff he needed for another crew. So he was using our trailer like on a week by week basis until he could get over that hump and be able to afford his own. And that's the kind of things that we really like to hear because it's an obvious, tangible service that is helping not just him, but the entire community by creating business and jobs and work for people. So we really like those kinds of stories.
That's amazing. So one question I had again from a person who couldn't make it today actually is they're like, do trailers have to be registered? So, and how does that work? If it's registered to the library, is that okay? And then, can
It,
you explain that a little bit?
yes, it is. It's registered. It has a license. Trailers have to be licensed. But it's sort of the same scenario as if you were renting a trailer from a like a U-Haul.
Right. Okay.
So once you've rented it, you assume all liability, right? The
Mm-hmm.
liability doesn't stay with U-Haul. It's you. You're renting it. How you use it is where the liability is. And so that's the same with them. It's our trailer, but how you use it. If you're in a wreck, your insurance is going to have to cover it. So, and that's actually true for a lot of the stuff that we circulate because we've had some people. talk to us about, do they have to take a class to prove they know how to use it? No, they don't. It's use at your own risk. We talk to our legal department, and libraries are pretty generally covered by liability because we don't charge money for anything, so we're not profiting.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's not really a concern. When you start putting conditions, then you start assuming a level of liability. If you say if you want to be able to do, you have to prove to me that you can. And we say you proved you could, and then you couldn't. So now we have created for ourselves a liability that didn't exist before. So we're pretty free with the, under you decided you wanted it. We assumed you could use it.
Totally.
So
Yeah, and that does seem to be a common trend. But what I think you are a little different in many respects, which again is why you made the list of, oh, I hope she will talk to us, which is, for example, you have ladders. And I know some libraries couldn't do anything where they come off the ground just due to their insurance. I think you also have a tandem bike. And I think
hmm
that looks also pretty cool. But I know that's been a issue for some libraries. They're worried about circulating helmets. So they didn't want to circulate a bike without helmets, and then they were afraid of lice or um, sizes of helmets. Like, do you have 70 helmets, or do you just say, hey, use your own helmet, you know? Could you talk a little bit about the ladder and the bicycle?
Sure. Yes, we do. We have ladders, and we have one of those that like folds into 16 different shapes and all that kind of stuff. And then we
It's
have some just
amazing.
regular ones. But again, we did all of this in consultation with our legal department, and the overarching um, message that we got from them was that we are indemnified from most liability.
Yeah,
Now, we do have to make sure that it's in working order. Like you can't
totally.
check out things and not make sure that, if it has broken pieces and stuff like that. But once we've done that, once we've circulated a working ladder, if someone hurts themselves on the ladder, it's it's this is going to sound, I don't know, maybe facetious, but if somebody tripped over your book and fell down the stairs,
Right.
it wouldn't be your fault. If somebody falls off a ladder, it's not your fault. So we've been very, as I said, our legal team is backing us up on this. And part of it, like our district attorney said to me, um, anybody can sue for any reason. Our
Yeah.
question is not, would somebody sue? The question is, how likely is it to actually make it into court? And then how likely is it that they would win? And that's when we become concerned.
Yeah.
So the bar isn't someone might sue, because frankly, people can sue for anything,
Yeah.
no matter how ridiculous. But that doesn't mean it's going to even make it into court. So we approach everything from that, and so far, I should knock on wood, but so far everything has been okay.
No, well, but that is actually true. And Lisa, I don't mean to harp on this, but in the sense of, I think it's really important to hear this from other libraries when you're a smaller library and you don't have the resources like you do, and you're like, well, should I? Shouldn't I? Why? I don't know. Is there anyone who is? And I think you are one of these leaders who is like, we did our due diligence, and you know what? It's about creating the sharing economy and helping people where they need help and
Mm-hmm.
being part of a community and us all coming together. And instead of knocking on your neighbor's door, well, hey, maybe you knock on your library's door and your neighbor's door, and we can all do this together. It's our communal garage and kitchen and things. So that's just fabulous. Um, to hear. So no gas tools is another common standard about many libraries that we're like that as well, even though again, completely different populace, but so many similarities. Something that we haven't managed to do yet, though, is we didn't get into any automotive tools because recently we found out because we thought our local automotive stores were lending the tools so that you would buy a bunch of stuff, then you could go into their you could go outside and you could use their tools to put the stuff in your car, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we found out that there's actually a few small things they don't lend. So now we have to go into automotive tools, just like the a lug wrench and things, the like five things they don't lend. And I noticed you had some stuff too, like an autocode reader, um, and stuff. Are you, when you purchased in this section, like the automotive section, was that part of this resiliency planning, or was this based on, kind of one-offs like this based on someone donated to us, so we threw it in?
Um,
Or, yeah, tell us a little more.
that stuff was actually that goes along with our sort of original purpose, which was
Yeah.
things that you need once or twice that you
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to either pay for yourself or necessarily store. So like the
Mm,
auto code reader, that's the kind of thing that you don't need that every day.
yeah.
And you could invest in having one, but you're not going to need it every day. And then it just sits on a shelf gathering dust. So why not just borrow ours when you need it? So yes, that was more purposeful because it did fill a very specific kind of, everybody sees those codes. Things like your little button comes on, and you're like, well, it could be 1,000 things. It could be that the car's about to explode, or it could just be that the tires are getting kind of flat. Which one
Mm-hmm.
is it?
Yeah.
So, and we also, we try to, it's like my point of view on programming, which is off topic, but my point of view on programming is that library programming should be a loss leader for the resources that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and not just because this seems like it would be a fun program to do. So all of the programs that we do are tied back to a database or a service we provide, or kinds of books that we do. And we have like many libraries, we have like the Chilton's engine repair. And
Yeah.
so whenever we do anything, we also say, and by the way, we also have the Chilton's engine repair. So that we try to find as many opportunities as we can to piggyback one on the other.
So smart. So cool. So on that note, so I was really intrigued by your thematic units. And folks, this is something we're going to go into again, more kind of the educational STEM kits. We have some speakers coming up on this topic. Specifically, but I thought your thematic units are really cool. For those of you who haven't got to see, there's everything from like edible science to magnets. Are you programming with them? Is that for a homeschool population? Did you folks come up with this, or did you throw money at an organization? Tell me more about those things.
Um, so those are to both situation. We
Okay.
do those. We do a lot of our own programming with those,
Yeah.
and it was one way to sort of streamline programming in our various different branches. Not all of our branches are staffed as robustly, and
Yeah.
so it was one way of like making it easier for everybody to be able to provide a consistent, good product. But we also have a very strong homeschooling community, and and so this is a way both to do our own programming, but to provide them with the opportunity, because we can't always repeat a program just for the homeschooling community. So now they can take it home and do it themselves. And most of the kits, we started out with designing our own. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
did a program, it went over really well, so we figured out what it would take to make it portable. Once we'd done that, we did a little more investigating, and we found some good vendors. And I'm not going to be able to tell you off the top of my
No,
head, but
it's
we
totally
found some
fine.
good,
Totally fine.
we found
You
some
don't know
good
every
vendors.
book or thing in your library?
I
No.
know, I'm such a loser. Um, we found some good places where we can get the various different kinds, and so obviously STEM and STEAM are really important across everywhere, and so we do a lot of those, and so there's like make your own balloon rockets and things like that. So
So cool. Yeah, I might ping you later on something about this. So, um, yeah, love this. So on that note, so some of these, it seems like they would have consumables. Like I saw you had like a knitting loom and things. Do you include consumables in your kit, or do you say, hey, this is the tool. You'll have to buy this, this, and this, or acquire this, this, and this?
we try not to do the consumables,
Yeah.
because we have to be able to sustain the budget, and we and the things like yarn. you never really know how much yarn you need, and you're not going to get the yarn back. They're not going to only, and it's also things like what color do they want and all of that. It's so we provide the implements. We do not provide consumables. We had a little bit of time during COVID where we were doing more stuff with consumables, but we ended that pretty quickly because we have, as everybody, we have a limited budget, and we wanted to focus on what I thought was most important was not creating a scenario where a small number of families get everything they need from the library, but as many people as possible can get the foundation so that they can build on it.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I think a lot of us, I can say same here again. I think a lot of us have tried the consumable route, moved away, maybe do art swap supplies or craft swap supplies instead. Um, so team, those of you who are here, I want to let you know you can ask questions too. You can just put it in group chat or whatnot. We're friendly folk, I promise. You can just, if you don't want to unmute and ask a question, I have plenty to go. So you also can just listen to me blabber on. Uh, so don't worry, it'll be mostly Lisa answering the cleverly answering. But just know that if you need point of clarification or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Um, so yeah, so um, something I noticed is so again, because I'm in Maine, and don't get me wrong, we had some hot days up here occasionally, but I was really impressed with your sprinkler collection. For those of you who haven't noticed, they have like blow up sprinkler slides, they have sprinkler archways and unicorns. There are so many sprinklers. How does this work? How do they not pop? Do they come back with mildew? Is it just worth it and you're like willing to do it because it adds so much joy? Tell me more.
So it is definitely something that adds more joy for them than for my staff. So it's so I will say that. But they are incredibly popular.
Yeah.
Now we have had, like, that's one of the areas where we get questions about liability.
Hmm.
Um, and we've even had people who said, like, I wanted to do this, but my homeowners association says I have to have insurance. Do we get that from
Oh,
you? And we're like, no, you don't. No, no, no. That's on you.
yeah.
So the ones that we get are not designed for big, huge parties. They are definitely
Hmm.
designed for home use.
Hmm.
And that's great for two things. It does actually limit the number of people who can use them, which limits
Hmm.
their liability. Um, it also makes them much more handleable, right? Because the bigger
Yeah.
ones they really do
Yeah.
require teams and all sorts of things. So ours are relatively small, and so once they've deflated, they do tend to dry pretty quickly. But we also have a cleaning fee. So if you bring
Got
something
it.
back and it's all wet and muddy, we'll say we'll take it, but we're going to charge you $25 cleaning fee, or you can take it home, clean it, and bring it back. And more often than not, they're more than happy to take it home and clean it before they bring it back. But we always there is always loss. Sometimes it's because they did let it mildew, and then sometimes because those things are really not designed for years and years and years of use, right?
Yeah.
So we know that there's going to be an attrition rate among our sprinklers, and if they
Hmm.
last us 2 seasons, we think that that's a perfect, that's a return on our investment, because those ones also are not anywhere near as expensive as the large scale ones that you rent for parties. So,
Got
we're
it.
talking, most of these are between like $30 and $90.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Still super impressive. Anyone who hasn't seen them, I was like, oh man, those would be popular.
and yeah, the
Even up here.
summertime, we cannot keep them on the shelves. They are in constant use during our summer months. So,
Yeah. Oh, so are all of these items, let's talk a little bit about like organization here. So you have so many branches, you have so many people you serve. Could I be at one of your branches and be like, I want the unicorn sprinkler? And then would I have to go to the other branch? Would it get sent to me at my branch? And do all branches have a library of things, or is it centralized at one library?
it's not centralized at one library, but not every library has library of things items. at least. We store them in the branches that have the storage space for them.
Got it.
So it and some of them are the branches that are also not our most heavily used.
Okay.
Um, so and we have a delivery service. So all of our things, all of our materials float. All of our branches, if you hold one, it will be delivered to your branch. And so, as I said,
Oh.
everything but this the trailer will go to your branch. So or wherever you designate you want it picked up. Um, so yeah, but and it's part of our normal delivery schedule. We have two vans and a F-250 pickup truck um, that we can use to transport things around the county.
Wow.
So
So they don't have to be like here, I'll just say like where we are to be on interlibrary alone, we have to be in granted, I'm not in a branch system, so we don't have control over that, but they all have to be in a certain size box. But it sounds like you within your library system have a little more flexibility.
yes, yes, we do. And uh, we have lifts on our trailers, so we don't nobody's throwing their back out getting things in and out.
Good.
And we transport for ourselves all sorts of things. During COVID, everybody was, much more, as they should have been, concerned about hygiene. And so
Yep.
we've got some portable sinks that we could use
Cool.
for some of our outdoor programming so that people would wash their hands. So those kinds of things, those are stanchions, whole big sets of stanchions so that we can send them, for crowd control. All of those sorts of things can get rolled onto our delivery vans. And so we're used to having to move heavy things. And so this is just an extension of that. Um, so sometimes our delivery vans are like, okay, look, we're going to need two runs to cover all of this stuff, but generally it's the tandem bike is the hardest thing to load because it's long enough that you have to get it in just right if you want to close the doors. But other than that, it's just a matter of making room in the van. So
But it seems like it's worth it because it brings people in, it sounds like.
yeah, it does. And I was actually surprised. The tandem bikes came to us. We purchased some bikes and just regular bikes.
Yeah.
And one of our cities, so we partner with our cities. They provide the buildings and we provide the library service. And so
Amazing.
one of our cities is like they had purchased some tandem bikes and I thought it was a wonderful program so that they could do adaptive bike rides. So they could help
Cool.
sight impaired people. So
Yeah.
they'd pair them up with somebody and they could, do it. And they had several years of that being very, very successful. But then, sort of the leader, the person who made it work, um, was out of pocket for whatever reason,
Yeah.
and they had all these tandem bikes and nobody was using them anymore, so they donated them to the library. And so that was not, I have to say, I don't think I would have ever thought about tandem bikes, but we're like, yeah, sure, we're circulating bikes, we'll circulate tandem bikes too. And they're very popular, people really enjoy them. But the thing we hear the most is those Doublemint twins made it look easy, and it's not. So it's not as easy as apparently there's an art to tandem biking. Um, so
Oh, how cool. Um, so, sometimes I'm not going to ask the right questions and someone's going to watch this recording and they're going to be like, but wait, what I really want to know is this. If they have a question about some of the things you've mentioned, like maybe we have someone in our network who really wants to get into tandem bikes. Is there a way they could find out more information? Would it be okay for them to message your help desk, for example, or get in contact?
absolutely.
Okay.
They can contact me directly if they want.
Okay.
I think you have my email address. Feel
I
free to
do.
give it to anybody who wants it, and they absolutely can just contact my library, the Brazoria County Library System. We'll be happy to talk to anybody about any of this. We're very proud of our collection, and I think it's done a lot of good in our community. So
Well, and again, you're sharing out, and we're going to learn from you, and it's going to be great. So thank you. I mean, I love librarians willing to share. This is so cool. Well, so one thing that you do that we don't do is you deal with some code G items. Code G in my library means gross without telling the public. Which is, i.e., it has gross potential, a
Yes.
bathroom situation or whatnot. We librarians all deal with that. So, for example, a wet dry vac, carpet
Hmm.
cleaners. I know many tool libraries who have had these with no issue, and then I know some people who have had issues. Tell me the truth. Have there been issues?
There are issues. There are definitely issues. We get people who return things that they haven't cleaned. And
Yeah.
that's, we did not originally have a $25 cleaning fee.
Yeah.
That came later, and my staff now knows it's not a small thing to have to, especially with the carpet cleaner and things like that, because you have to open them up and make sure that they're clean and dry. And sometimes it's not clean or dry. And we close it up immediately and we call the patron and like this, you're either going to come pick this up and clean it or we're charging you $25. And as I said, most of them are willing to come back and clean it. And if they don't, we charge them $25, which then blocks checkout. Like $25 is enough.
Got it.
That they can't use not just our regular checkout. They can't get onto computers. They can't access any of our streaming services. So they get pretty much locked out of all library service until they give us $25 or they clean the damn thing. So um,
Now, do you have to draw a short straw to who cleans it, or is it
yeah,
yeah, okay, okay.
the branch that gets it back as the
Yeah.
unfortunate recipient, and they then get stuck, and I know that they're like, oh, it's her fault, and that's okay. That's why I'm the
Yeah.
director. I'm the director so that people can curse at me under their breath. That's one of the things that's the privilege of being the director. Um, but it does not happen so much that we've gotten to the point where like we're just not going to do this anymore. The $25 fee was like we did hit a tipping point with that. Like if we don't give them a reason, they're not going to, and
Yeah.
so that's where the $25 fee came from.
Well, so on that note, I mean, you've obviously talked about, some evolution as you've gone along here. Can you talk about like some of the things, the decisions you made that maybe like really influenced what it is today, or if you're unhappy with something today with your library of things and you're hoping to see in the future? I'll give you an example. At our library, we really found out that putting things on the shelf so patrons could
Mm-hmm.
see them was a game changer for us and adoption and people really loving that in the library. Have there been things as part of your process or things you're hoping for in the future that you kind of see with your library of things?
Yeah, we've several sort of the same kind of things that you've just talked about, like making sure people are aware that we have the stuff. And
Yeah.
so we've done the same thing. We've tried to highlight more and more of the the things that don't need movement, right? We don't at this point we no longer advertise the carpet cleaners and
Yeah.
stuff like that because they don't need help.
Yeah.
They just don't need help. Some of the rest of the stuff we have started doing. I'm sorry, I have to. Sorry,
Oh,
we
no
have
worries.
started trying to figure out ways to better, market. And then we had to sort of realize several years in that the budget that we have to buy things, we're going to have to carve some money out for maintenance. So that was
Hmm.
one of the things that we had to do. We had to carve some things out for maintenance. Um, and then there were some things that we just realized we couldn't keep circulating. So we were
Mm.
circulating some camping equipment,
Ah,
and we were finding out, and this kind of hurts me a little bit
yeah.
because we had to stop with the camping equipment because our homeless community was checking stuff out and never bringing it back.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go after a homeless person for a
Yeah.
$30 uh, thing that you sleep in sleeping bag,
Absolutely.
or
Absolutely.
or a $110 tent. But I also can't supply the entire homeless community with
Yeah.
tents and sleeping bags. So there was some
Yeah.
stuff that we had to back away from. Oh, we already mentioned the winemaking kit. That was
Yeah.
something else. We're like, it's a great idea, but it's not going to work out for us.
Yeah.
So every once in a while we will come across, and it is a very sort of one-off situation. The camping equipment notwithstanding, everything else has been we thought that would work, but it's too delicate. It breaks every time, somebody tries to use it. It's not really designed for multiple people to use it multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And so those sorts of things, we we reach a point where we're like, if we've had to replace it X number of times, and it's sort of based on a lot of different factors, but once it costs a certain amount
Yeah.
to just keep it in the collection, we start to go, that's we can't keep going down that particular rabbit hole. So, and now we're in a situation where we need to start applying some weeding standards
Yeah.
to stuff,
Yep.
and trying to figure out what those weeding standards are. Because it's not like a book where the information might become dated and you don't want to circulate it because you're giving out bad information. A cake pan is a cake pan is a cake pan. But at some point we have to say, if nobody wanted the question mark cake pan in 5 years, we really need to keep it in the collection. So I mean, that kind of thing. And it's
Yeah.
not as clear cut or easy to define as weeding a book, when it's time to weed some of our library of things. So those are
Yeah.
the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's so no, that's so helpful. It's interesting to hear you say that because we actually are going the opposite direction on that. We had a policy if it doesn't get used in a year, we're very biased towards books. If it didn't get used in a year, we were
Uh,
required to get rid of it. And so we
uh-huh.
would give it to other libraries around the state of Maine, right? But now where people were like, "No, you got rid of my thing."
Yeah.
And so now we're extending it. But to your point, I like to call it pruning rather than weeding because I'm like, it's not necessarily a weed, but we need to let the collection grow correctly
Yes.
or
Yes.
grow healthily, not correctly. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. I love how you've talked about things you've met, you changed your mind on too. I think that's where we all learn so much from one another. Really good to hear about the Code G situations because we haven't, we also are do we do it? Do we not? Do we do it? Um, I thought it was really cool how you had this disaster recovery emphasis. Are there other emphases that you have in your collection like that? I mean, I looked at a lot and it seemed to have to do with health. I mean, even having the canopy for a sunny place, I know that is a huge win. And same with the sprinklers.
We do a lot. We I have a personal, I like sort of philosophy that we don't have special use rooms. Like we don't have
Yeah.
a puppet stage, right?
Yeah.
Because you can only use a puppet stage for puppet shows,
Right.
and you might do two of those a year. And so we don't. So I carry that over into our outreach, like our personal
Mm,
community engagement equipment. So a lot of the stuff that you see, like the canopies and stuff, are things that we purchased primarily for our own use.
got
We
it.
make them available to the public so that they are in use as much as possible. Um, and so that's a lot of what goes on there. But we also we try to support our maker spaces as well. So
Uh-huh.
our maker spaces are thematic. So we have like a digital editing for video and sound in one of our branches, and we have fiber arts in another branch, and then we have sort of fabrication in another branch.
That
Um,
explains it.
and so our video editing, we also then have some cameras and some mics and some portable green screens and things like that that we can check out, so that, as I said, so those two things sort of work together. One of our maker spaces is sort of a teacher's workroom scenario that we do for our
Cool.
homeschoolers.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of the cutouts, those little like pressy things that cut out specific shapes. And those those are the kinds of things that we can also circulate. So yes, we try to support our makerspace and as much as possible keep those things going. And then our disaster relief is obviously an important thing for our community. And so I think of it like our fiction collection. You want to
Yeah.
have like genres, right? And you within that genre you have very specific collection ideals, but you also have every genre. So we don't want to become so focused that we're ignoring the other needs in the community. But we do want to have some sense that we understand why we are buying things and not just going, as much fun as it is, and I would love to have a whatever, let's get one of those. So we don't want it to become our own personal um, supply
Closet.
for, yeah, exactly.
No, I love that. You have so many quotable moments in here. Watch out if any of this goes viral. You're like, yes, in the modern library.
Yeah.
It's so good. Okay, I want to open it up because we have about 10 minutes left. And not that it wasn't open before, y'all know Serena, Beth, Shannon, Pam, Brahmanja, don't I might have missed, and Lincoln. You're all welcome to chat, to put your questions in the chat, or to raise your hands. I want to make sure we get everything. If you had any burning desires, that you got those answered. Um, Lisa, I just want to say thank you for doing this, and thank you for continuing on, and thank you for sharing your knowledge. I am really inspired by your collection, especially because the scale is so massive in comparison to ours. Um, and I just am kind of at awe of what a large library system could do. And on that note, I think no one's going to argue with this point right now that I feel like there's a lot that our society is pretty divisive on and doesn't get along with on some things. And, sometimes libraries get caught up in the middle of that in a good way and sometimes in not such a good way. Sometimes they're a place for great discourse on variety of ideas and other times we have some other things. One thing that I've noticed from other libraries talking to them about the Library of Things is it can bring people together of different backgrounds, different viewpoints, different, life experiences. Are you seeing that in your library system? Do you think that is helpful, or is that just not part of the conversation?
I think it is helpful. And our being, and I'm going to go back to our disaster response,
Yeah.
our being in the community at that moment when people are in their most vulnerable and the most in need. And many of these people, the library is just not part of their cultural zeitgeist. It's not
Yeah.
what they think. And so the idea that the library is tangibly giving them what they need when they need it is eye-opening for them, and it creates a space for them to come in and become like long-term library users, and to see the library as a positive force of good. And so we recently, as a lot of libraries have,
Yay.
we were recently hit by a censor, and we had like 18 requests for reconsideration in a 6-month period of
Wow.
time, which is like 3,000 times more than we would normally expect to have. Um, but we got, anytime that this particular censor would go online and talk about porn in the library, we didn't have to respond. We immediately got community response saying, I
Wow.
go to that library. There's not porn. They have a lot of good stuff. They don't have porn. And so I think that by having these opportunities and having things that are not traditional library materials gives us a way to connect with the people who aren't going to come in and necessarily read our books.
Yeah. And that's
And
okay, right? You
that's
want
totally
them,
okay.
you want
We
them anyway,
we
right?
want them anyway.
Yeah,
And we want them to then discover all the other resources that we can
exactly.
give for them. And so it has given us a lot of wide support in our community. So much so that one of our local papers did do you think the commissioners should be able to remove materials from the library? And which is, I mean, everything about that poll, I was like, ugh. But 87% of the respondents were like, absolutely not. And so
Amazing.
this kind of thing is just one of the bricks in your wall against things like that. So it actually, it's a good way of connecting to the community and to people who aren't your traditional library user.
Yeah, which is, you obviously excel traditionally, but then open up all of these other avenues to help support your communities. I'm really just in awe. So, um, thank you, Lisa, so very much for sharing your message, for being willing to help all these other folks who want to follow in your footsteps. I am I'm gonna go get some code G options tools now, probably see if because so now I can point to you. I'm like, hey, Lisa's doing it. We can too. Um, so thank you so very much. I hope to see you again soon in Library Land. And I'm going to make sure you're on our map if you're not already. We have like 300 folks for anyone who hasn't noticed on our mailing list. And folks are putting themselves on the maps. And we're getting to riff off each other about what we want or maybe don't want. That's okay too. So anyway, just thank you so much for being in this community, everyone on here, and for trying to do some good.
Thank you.
I'm
It's
so
been such a
grateful.
pleasure.
All right. Be well, all. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.